We're very, very happy to have Maxine Milleur with us this morning. Maxine has written an amazing number of books on spiritualism, on different aspects of spiritualism, and I'll get her to tell you a little bit more about it. So she's particularly going to talk about one of her books, which is Great Moments in Modern Mediumship. She's also going to give us some tips on what she's learned through the arduous process of self-publishing. And we've got some other publishers with us today, so that'll be very, very interesting. Craig, can I call on you just to say a quick hello on behalf of AREI?
Welcome, everybody. It's wonderful to see you here, and we are looking forward to this experience with Maxine. I know her work and her great moments of modern mediumship, and I'm anxious to see what she has to say today. So welcome, everybody, and look forward to a wonderful day.
So I was going through the spiritual journey and reading a lot of books and finding a lot of good material in all of the books. And I was thinking all of this material put together would be just incredible. And when people are having a mental mediumship or physical mediumship and talking about the phenomena, these little bits of information I was finding in all of the books could be good information for everyone. So I gathered all of what I was doing, whether I call it research, and I was collating all of the information and the bits that I was learning from all these different books. And it looked to me like a encyclopedia. But the problem is nobody buys encyclopedias and nobody reads encyclopedias. So I wanted to present this material and I put it in this format. I didn't say the encyclopedia of modern mediumship. I put them all into different categories, all these little stories. Now, so this was the first book, and I didn't know how I was going to publish it. I was living in the Middle East at the time, and I went to my local printer and I said, "Can you print this?" And things are very cheap overseas. They printed out a little book that Wendy had, and I call that the pre-publication version. And I didn't know if that was going to be the final format, but I used it to send it to people to get their reviews. Now, if you have a book inside of you, it's great to write it, but to get it out there takes marketing. And marketing is a different side of the brain than writing was. So you have to, once you've written it, that can't be enough. So if you look at the back of the first one, what I did and what aspiring writers should do is to get the book out to people in the field, people that they respect, and say, "This is a free book for you. Give me your opinion on it." And this is what was done. And I got all these pre-publication reviews that I put on the back. Again, you have to know your target audience, and you have to know who in your field has written a similar book that can say good things about your book. Now, the second book, Great Moments of Modern Mediumship 2, okay, has a similar cover. does not have the reviews on the back. Okay, I should have done that, but it would have been better, if I'd had the president of the SNU. If it would have been better if I had had Scott Milligan's review on the back, Wendy Zemmett's review on the back. So as you're marketing or thinking about marketing your own book, think about potential reviewers and seek them out for the review. Again, if they don't say anything good, you don't have to include it. If they say something and give you good advice, that's a good area to make some changes. But just because you think the book is finished and you've written it, well, the real work actually has started, and that is the marketing. Now, that brings me into the difference between traditional publishers and self-publishing. Take, for example, Eben Alexander, a doctor, physician, brain surgeon, Harvard neurosurgeon. He had a near-death experience and he wrote a book about it. He wrote 2 or 3 books about it. Now, someone like that, the traditional publishers would really want, okay? Here's a doctor who had a near-death experience. He's Harvard trained. He looks good on TV. The traditional publishers know that they can make money off of Eben Alexander. So traditional publishers will not make a judgment about you. They will make a judgment about whether they can make money on you. You may be a good person, you may be a great medium, you may have a great story, but if they can't make any money off of you, they're not going to pick you up. And so writers who have written a book, who are writing a book, have to ask themselves very objectively, what is it about me that a traditional publisher would want to have? Using the Eben Alexander example, am I a physician? Am I Harvard trained? Did I have a near-death experience? Do I look good on TV? If you have none of those, a traditional publisher would probably say, we're not going to pick you up, and so traditional publishers, it's hard to find the Penguins of the world, or the One World of the world, or the mainstream publishers to pick you up. Even a medium like Tony Stockwell, or what's that guy out in California, the American one?
James Van Praagh?
Yeah. I mean, even James Van Praagh, I met him briefly once. I don't know him personally, but look at it from the publisher's point of view. James Van Praagh has written 10 books. If you're a publisher, can you make money off of the 11th? So much of those decisions about whether to pick your book up for publication is purely economics. So unless you really stand out and are an Eben Alexander, or a Tony Stockwell, or a James Van Praagh with his first 10 books, you probably will not be picked up by a traditional Penguin or traditional publisher. It's very, very hard. You have to have a hook. You have to have sellability. Now, having said that, if you're lucky enough to get a picked up like an Eben Alexander, the traditional model with traditional publishers is that for first-time authors, they may or may not give you an advance. I'm talking about traditional publishers. So, Evan, let me back up. To even get to the traditional publishers, to even get your foot in the door, to even be heard by Penguin, conventional wisdom states that you must have a book agent. So James Van Praagh and Evan Alexander first had to get a book agent. They had to pay money to have somebody represent them. And that agent had to say, can I make money on you? Because I'm not going to do this unless I can make money on you. So it always comes down to economics. And then that agent is known by the Penguins of the world, and that agent pitches you. So you can see the difficulty in this in traditional publishing. Now, and then on top of that, even now the Penguins of the world, they may give you a little advance, and they may put you on a publicity tour, but they'll expect you to do publicity on your own. So if you go down that road, if you're lucky to go down that road, it has its own wormholes. And I'm not on that trail, but I'm just telling you. Now, self-publishing has really taken off in the last 10 years. About 10 years ago, self-publishing meant that you had to pay somebody to publish your book. And it was more like vanity publishing. Vanity publishing is when people with money think they're important and they pay somebody to make a lot of books for them. It's usually about memoirs, okay? And I'm not knocking it, but that's what it's called, vanity publishing. So if that's for you, go ahead. Pay a lot of money and you'll get books. And 10 years ago, self-publishing was that you had to pay to play. But now, and the reason you had to pay to play was that you had to pay somebody, and they were usually programmers who took your manuscript and they crunched it down and they formatted it to a size of a book and how many pages and da, da, da. And there's a lot of technical things in formatting a book. And that's what you were paying for. But in the last 5 years, the technology and the programs have gotten so good that you could upload your manuscript to, say, Amazon, punch the button, and they would format it automatically or within a matter of minutes, free. So self-publishing has really come a long way to be that it is practically free now. CreateSpace on Amazon and a whole other type of websites or self-publishing platforms are 100% free. They might try to sell you things like a new cover or something, but you can do it totally free. Print on demand, and it's yours without paying anything. So that's how self-publishing has come. That's how far it's come. And that has really leveled the publishing playing field. So you have to ask yourself, what advantage does it take? What advantage is there if I got a book agent and I went to Penguin? You know, there's still some advantages to going toward Penguin, but the playing field is totally level now. Now, in between self-publishing and traditional, in between the two on the spectrum, are niche publishers. There are a few in the United States. There is Saturday Night Press Publications, of which the publisher is in the audience here, Ann Harrison. And these niche publishers only deal with books within a very sub-genre. So if you had a channeling book that talked about Native American mythology or Native American philosophy, then you could go to the contents of that material, Native American mythology and channeling, and to try to find a niche publisher in any one of those areas that your book deals with. If you're in spiritualism, you might go to Saturday Night Press. If you're into UFOs, you know, that's a whole different subgenre of niche publishers. And whatever your book is about, you have to know the layout of the land. You have to know the publishers that you might have to deal with. So in my case, I have Great Moments of Modern Mediumship 1 and 2, published by Saturday Night Press. Ann Harrison is the publicist and publisher. And I have 4 books that are self-published through CreateSpace on Amazon. You look in Amazon, you type my name and you'll find, for example, what the great mediums have taught us about spiritual healing, what the great mediums have taught us about spirit guides. None of those are 100, 200 pages, but they're little bits. They're worth something, at least to me. And I also wrote How to Find a Good Psychic Medium and What is Spiritualism. And my last book was about coffee reading, not tea reading, but coffee reading. Again, these aren't 100, 200 pages like these are, but you know, I wanted to put them out. They're small, and I wanted to expand my library. Now, I will also say that I have another book by a pen name, and it has nothing to do with spiritualism. And if someone wants me to ask me about that, that's a little off topic, but it's worth talking about if you wanted to put it under a pen name, which makes marketing very difficult. Anyway, so I don't know the time here. I want to add some words here now about publicity and marketing. Okay, great. You've published it. You found a publisher. They put it into print. Congratulations. You know, are you going to make any money off it? You know, are you going to put it out there? You know, I mean, nobody wants to write to be a millionaire, but, you know, £100 a year, you know, comes in handy. So how do you publicize your book? And again, I'll reiterate, if this side of your brain was used in writing the book, a completely different mindset A completely different approach, thinking goes into marketing. And if your book is about spirituality or spiritualism, a good place to start is the 300, 400, 500 spiritualist churches all around the world. When I would go to England, I would get the newspaper, the Two Worlds newspaper, or the Psychic Times. And I would look in the back to find the addresses for all of the churches. And I'd Google all of the churches and I'd find their address. And it's coming, folks. Marketing, publicity costs money. Costs money that you have to pay. If you signed a contract with Penguin, they'll pay a little of it, but they'll expect you also to do stuff on your end, and they'll expect you to pony up and to devote some money. So, bad news. You wrote your book. In order to make money off your book, you're going to have to spend money by marketing it. And if that means sending 100 copies through the mail, then you go to your post office and see if you can get a cheap rate, because you have to spend. In the early days, I spent some money. And if you aren't able to do that, then your book will honestly go nowhere. And so when you look for a publicity, you have to look at your target audience and try to match them as directly as possible. Okay, whether it be spiritualist churches, whether it be spiritualist centers, whether it be sending a free book to every big name medium and hope they disseminate it through their Facebook pages and Instagrams and and it's a lot of time and it's a lot of legwork and it's a lot of little expenses that seemingly will not get anything back for months or months and months at a time. And with Facebook and Instagram, you will have to spend hours, dozens of hours, in identifying people to target, to send your book to, and they will publicize it within their circles. So let me see. I hope I haven't bored anybody or talked my head off here, but internet radio and good old-fashioned FM, AM radio. I had a radio show on Blog Talk, and it was a good platform for me to read portions of my book into books and to talk about it. It just, you can see where I'm getting at. This side of the brain wrote the book, but this side of the brain has to think totally in different ways and targeting your market audience and everything to do with your market audience to market it. Now, you've paid some money for marketing. I'll end my speech, or I'll end this portion of the speech, with the topic of book publicists, which is different from book agents. One is to get it published, and one is after you've gotten it published to get it publicized, a book publicist. And you, as an author, have to make a decision whether you really want to use a book publicist and all of their services and all of their connections to get your book on a higher platform of publicity.
How about we give you a break at that point, Maxine? You've done brilliantly, and you've opened the field really well. We've got your own publisher here who might maybe add something. So, Anne, can I call on you?
Everybody, hello.
What are your advices to
Yes,
anybody who would like
I
to
know
start?
exactly what well, I know exactly what Maxine is saying. I mean, the only reason I went into publishing was because we couldn't get a publisher to take Tom's book about his story of his mother's amazing mediumship in a mini Harry. We couldn't get anybody to take it on. And it was only thanks to Tom Butler in Arizona that we actually were told about Lightning Source and doing self. And from there, with David Fontana's help, it just snowballed. And people find out about me, and I do it.
Well, this is
that yes, it's not cheap to do it. Even just getting the whole thing going. But if I had to charge for my that I have to put into a book to do it, it would cost several thousand, not the few hundreds that I charge to do it, because I say pension to live on comfortably, reasonably, and so I say yes, okay, but we can do it, but it does cost this much. Money is my big problem, but I largely rely on the spiritualist press, on people, and because I work with Lightning Source, who are part of Ingram's, the largest book catalogue company, the book can go worldwide. All of our books go straight onto Amazon. And this is one of the advert, because people just look for things. They put in a word, and if you get words right, then it's there, because people very often don't look at publications. They don't look at all the others. If I've written to churches and I've written to secretaries, no, they're not interested in pushing it. If you can do a talk yourself, a place that you go to, then yes, that's your publicity. And this is what we used to find with Tom, that we could sell a huge number. But the difficulty is then, how much do you spend? How much are you going to make on sending them? Or do you just sort of send out to the universe, okay, folks, found by the people that want it? So that's the way I work. And at the moment, I've done 4 books this year. The latest one should be out next week or 2 weeks' time, and it's the reprint of the Jack Webber book by Harry Edwards. Denzel, nephew, has sold all the old copies that he bought from the Harry Edwards Trust, and Harry Edwards Trust has now said, yes, please, we don't want to. You would like to do it? Yes. And so that is coming out into paperback and into ebook in just now, because now the facility of getting it into ebooks as well, which is a whole new ball game. But it just is, it's an exciting time. I thoroughly, but I know the difficulty, and this is why I started to help people get the books out there that they wanted to be out, whether they are reprints or whether they are new books. And I say I'm pleased to see with the cover, and of course that's one of my joys, is designing cover. So making a new cover for a book. And it took me a long time putting all those little photographs together for Maxine's books. And they're not all the same. Volume 2, it covers the mediums that are in the new book and the researchers. So there's some different ones. Some are the same, but a lot different. Yeah. So, and they're all listed. There's a little diagram inside that shows you who's who on it. So thank you, Maxine.
Thank you, Anne. That's very helpful.
Yeah, it's a problem. It is a problem. Getting marketing is the big one.
And it's true, and it's an issue that's coming. It's crucial to spiritualism. Those of us who want to get the message out come across this all the time. Craig, could I ask you to share what's your experience? I know you've written some wonderful books, and perhaps you could tell us a little bit about what you've learned.
Sure, I've gone through the entire gamut. So I have used an agent. I've had a book published through an agent, so I went that direction. I was in the book publishing when we were having the offset print of books. And when you do an offset print, that means that you have to purchase 5,000 books or 2,000 books, and it's tremendously expensive for you. And then you've got them warehoused in your basement or in your dining room, and then you have to send them out, you know, so you get an order, you've got to send it out, and you have a beeline over to the post office. So I've done that. I've also used book publishers who do self-publishing books, and there's one called Book Patch, and I've used them, and so I've used them as well. And then finally, I've created Greater Reality Publications, and much like Ann Harrison's work, it is an effort to make possible the publication of books by these authors who can't get their books published or don't want to go the agent route. And I'll tell you, out of all of them, the best way to publish the books is to go ahead and publish them yourself with the aid of someone like Greater Reality Publications if necessary, and do it yourself, because it's a mess working with agents, and it's a mess having to offset prints and put them in your basement. And these the publishers like Greater Reality Publications will use the print-on-demand services. CreateSpace used to be the Amazon's print-on-demand, and what they would do is they would print the books as they were ordered, and then they would collect the money for them, and then they would send the books out, and that was great for the authors. Or Lightning, which is connected with Ingram, and the reason that it's good to be connected with Ingrams is that they then are going to distribute and publicize the book. So that's the way that I would suggest that people go now, because of the fact that that's such an effective way to do it. It gets your book out immediately. And then I've had books that we published through Greater Reality Press that have then been picked up by the large publishers. So that will happen eventually. But I'd really recommend that. Anybody who wants to write a book, go for it. And you can start off with, you can put it on Kindle very easily. And so you've got an ebook that people can look at and they can read. And then you can go into the press, some of these self-publishing presses. But I would recommend that you be very careful. There are self-publishing presses out there that will take your money and not give anything back. And so you really have to do the reviews. You have to look at the people who are involved, do due diligence and find out whether they have criminal records. And we know about these people who are out there, and you have to avoid them like the plague.
Thank you very much, Craig. Scott Milligan, you've got a shop. Can you tell us a little bit about what kind of books are selling?
Well, at the moment we did what Anne was selling in her press shop. We took it onto the online shop because we built a following up to 21,000 followers quite quickly. The books which are selling at the moment, which is more to do with Leslie Flint. Leslie Flint's one is really selling. I know that Jack Webber's one is going to be a very, very fast seller. If you try and look on eBay at the moment, if you want to get Webber's book, you are looking at spending up to £100 for a copy. Now, for people who are just coming into the subject, you've got to try and make the book interesting as possible. Really, books on about development. Development is unique to you. Your own development is your own peculiarity. So hearing other people's stories of experiences, that seems to be much more interesting to the greater world. So I know with Anne's books, they sold out quite quickly, especially if we were doing an event and then we'd say, look, go on to, if you want a book, please go on to the site. So wherever you are, if you just say, look, if you want to know more, we do sell books, and then just give them the link. But as you said, advertising is a very powerful tool. For me, Facebook is extremely powerful. You can build up a very large following very, very quickly. And it's always good to speak to the younger generation who seems to be on social media much more often. They seem to know hashtag and all this business, and I don't know that. I just only know about click and snap on. But the CDs are going very, very well because a lot of mediums are dyslexic. So reading a book is a horror film. So CDs, if you are going to want to go into a market area, if people can actually read like On the Edge of the Etheric and put it onto CD form, for people like me who's severely dyslexic, who can't read books, that would be an absolute godsend for myself, for education.
That's fantastic. Audiobooks. Anne, are you into audiobooks, or what's involved in creating an audiobook?
Well, you have to get somebody who's going to read the whole book to create an audiobook. But the other way around it with computers, and I know it applies because I see that we've got Laurie McLeod on with us. Hello, Laurie. And I did send her, because Laurie is blind, and so she can't read a book at all. But I found that we can send PDF copies out, and the computer can read it to her. It's not the same, but it is a way around. I have had a request for an audiobook, but it is a huge amount of money to get them read, to have somebody to read it sensibly, clearly, and a long time, and then to produce it.
Can I call on Sheila? Because Sheila has written a number of best-selling books in the commercial world, as well as lots of good fiction books. So, and she's just got a new one out. Sheila, let's hear from you.
Well, I have 4 audiobooks out, and they didn't cost me a penny. And they're beautifully done. New one just came out. And in fact, I have some free promo codes if anybody is interested. They're not about the spirit world, but they're about my forensic handwriting mystery series. But to get any genre of book done in audio, free, go to acx.com, and they are owned by, it's Audible, is the company that puts out the books, but they're owned by Amazon. And you go on there and you post a sample of your book, an excerpt, and then you get auditions from people who are readers, and you can listen to the various readers if you don't have one already, and choose them. And then there's 2 ways of doing it. You can either pay the person directly, whatever they charge, a certain number, like they might charge $100 per finished hour. And in my books, which are about 350 pages, that would be about, it's about 10 hours, so about $1,000. However, as I said, I haven't paid anything. You can do it as a royalty split and so ACX gets half, and then you split the other half. They do it for you. You never have to do anything. You just get a check, a very small check. I just got a check or actually a direct deposit. I just got a check for a deposit for $47 for the last month for my 4 books. So they've sold, a couple of hundred. They don't sell very well, but it's a way of doing it without charging. And what I sorry. Well, the other thing, there's a couple of things that I think are important that I'd like to add, and I didn't hear anybody mention. The most important money that you will spend if you're self-publishing a book is to hire a good editor. The best thing about now of self-publishing is that anybody can do it. The worst thing about self-publishing is that anybody can do it, because it's not easy to write a book, and you need to work with a good editor who's going to tell you, and I'm not talking about just a copy editor who's checking your spelling and grammar. You want a substantive editor who's going to make sure that everything makes sense and that, it's in good order and you have an outline and all that sort of thing. There is a website called Editors and Predators, and Craig was talking about those people who are criminals, and Editors and Predators list people who have been found to be snake oil salesmen and take your money and run. So that's a good place to find out. And finally, as far as agents, my first book was published in 2000. So I've been doing this for about 18 years professionally, and I've had 6 books published by Penguin and Macmillan, and I've got a small publisher now, and I've self-published 4 books, so I've got a lot of experience. But I've had 7 agents, and none of them sold anything for me. And 2 of them were really good agents. One of them sold The Godfather from book to movie. So it's true that to get a big publisher, most of the time you need an agent, but you don't always have to. And one way to find an agent is to go to book conventions, especially in the genre that you're writing, because they usually have agents there who are looking for authors. And I said that was the last thing, but there is one other thing, and that is on publicity. That is the hardest part of writing a book. Last year, I spent $6,000 on a publicist, and it did absolutely nothing. Now, I found another one who I'm really happy with, who is way less than that and is already doing way more. But I agree with Anne that the best way to sell your books, especially this type of book, is to give talks and have the books available. I buy them. Create Space closed earlier this year, and now it's become KDP, which is Kindle Direct Publishing. So I buy, 10 or 20 of each of my books, and I haul them along with me. And I go to various events, and I have them there, or like I'm going to an expo, a book expo, or the LA Times Festival of Books, and I'll have them there at a table. So it is, if you're going to write a book, you have to really be prepared to do a lot of work in the marketing area. But first, get yourself an editor.
Yeah,
Thank
we
you,
went
Sheila.
through. Yeah, we went through the agent route as well, and we did the same thing. We had gone through agents one after another, and finally we ended up going to a publisher that we really liked, and we pitched it to them, and we got the contract with the publisher, and so we didn't get anything good out of the agents. So I'm just not a fan of agents. As far as the audiobooks is concerned, we're right now publishing Hans Otto Koenig's book with his accounts of what he's been communicating from the other dimensions, and it's been a very successful process. We had a volunteer who wanted to do the audiobook and did a marvelous job with it. And so we're right now in the process of finalizing it. They have very strict guidelines about how the audio must be done. So you have to contact them and get the guidelines and record in a way in which they want them recorded if you do it yourself rather than have them do it. But it is possible to get a volunteer to do it, someone who is articulate and has a good voice, and they can do the audiobook, and then you can take it to ACX, and they then will handle the rest of it, and it's just a marvelous tool.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to share their experiences? Susan Barnes, thank you. And
thank you for muting me. No, I was going to say that my experience was with self-publishing, and for $3,000, they did everything. They formatted the book, they edited, I got it. That was including editing and all kinds of stuff, and I was very happy with what Lulu did. And they also put the book up on Amazon and all the different online bookstores. They turned it into an electronic book for me, and they did all that work, and they're collecting the money, and they'll pay me the royalties and everything. So they handled everything.
is that still current, Susan, that system? Because
Yeah,
there's been a lot of changes in the last 12 months, I think.
Well, Lulu Press, the reason why I went to them was because they've been around for over 10 years. And this was the press that we started using when I worked at Rochester Institute of Technology. And what we would do is we would get, like, if the students had done a whole series of papers and we did a conference, we would take all those papers, have Lulu publish them as a book, so that we could give all of the people and sell the books at the conference. And so that's one reason why I went with them, because I knew they were reliable and they'd been used by many of my friends for a long time. But they gave me discounts. I got discounts on the whole package, and then I did have to pay an extra $1,000 for some editing. But again, it was like $3,000. I have a book. And now what I'm doing is I am going around to doing talks and bringing the book with me. I'm on my mini promotional tour. I've been to Santa Barbara, and now I'm going to Florida in a couple of weeks to promote the book. And of course I have Lilydale, because all the bookstores in Lilydale will carry my book.
Fantastic. Suzanne Wilson, can I call on you, because I know you have recently redone your book the hard way, doing everything yourself.
Yes, and were it not for you and Victor, I might have just thrown in the towel. Scott said something earlier about, mediums are dyslexic, and for me, how it manifests is I'm very sensitive to computer issues, and I just look at something, and it's like I can look at something 15 times and not see the glaring error that somebody else just walks up and sees. So it's like I was losing my mind, and you guys kept telling me to stick with it. But long story short, I was referred to what I thought was a real publisher by a close friend, and it turned out this person defrauded over 30 authors by never paying them their royalties. And in fact, all I ever got was one bounce check. And we're still pursuing this through authorities, and that eats up a lot of time. But the book sold really, really well for that first year that the crook had it. And then because they folded their company, several of us authors made enough phone calls and emails and letters to Amazon to get that person investigated. So they had to shut down their publishing company. So then by rights, we get our books back because they're no longer in business. So a bunch of legal fees later, now I have a book, but I have no files because that publisher had the files. I have no cover. And so I pretty much start over. So what I spent was, and I love that everybody's sharing the money they spend, because I think that's really important for people to hear. I had an editor who was very inexpensive, who was referred by Wendy and Victor, and I don't know, am I allowed to say their name?
Yeah, he's a copy editor.
Okay, because I don't know if he's inundated with work or whatever, but the big expense for me was $1,200 to format everything. Because I wanted to, it's been a year. I've got more stuff I want to put in the book, of course. It's just like when you put me on stage, I go on, auto babble. And it's just like with the book, but I've got to add this and I've got to add that. So, we had to start over. We have no files. We just have a Word document. So I spent about $1,100 or $1,200 on just the book formatting. Then I'm wondering, where do I go with this? And I had just a heck of a time working with what was then CreateSpace. It was just driving me nuts trying to get things to upload, and Flash Player has to work, and that didn't work on 4 different computers that I tried. And it's like, I'm crying in my beer. It's like, why is this so hard? First I get ripped off, and da-da-da. So it's like, finally I just said, Spirit World, if you want this to happen, find me somebody that can make this happen. And Mary Holden helped me out and gave me a friend that, long story short, I said that twice already. I guess this is a long story long. Anywho, so I went the Ingram, the Lightning Press route. Then I found that even though I had 60 reviews on the first edition of the book, with a 4.8 or 4.9 rating on 60 Amazon reviews, Amazon would not stock my book. And people were calling the office from around the world they're saying it'll be 3 weeks before they get it or whatever. So I was going to ask that question before you called on me, Wendy, about how do we get Amazon to take, like the Lulu books and the Lightning Press books or whatever. And so now that it is on Amazon, now they do keep it in stock, but it took a long time. It was like 8 months before you could get the book in 2 or 3 days. I've probably sold only maybe 20% of what was sold in the first year. So I just want to give you guys a heads up. You can't write just one book. You have got to have a plan, and you've got to keep producing, and you've got to keep sharing. And to a point made earlier, it doesn't have to be a 45,000 word book every time, but you got to keep sharing your wisdom if you want to keep teaching. So I have 2 in progress right now. So here's my question: how do you get Amazon to stock your book?
Anybody like to take that up? Susan Barnes first, and then we'll come back to Maxine to finish.
Suzanne, I don't understand. Lulu just did it. They told me that it was going to take like 3 or 4 weeks to get up on Amazon, but they're not just Amazon. They do a whole bunch of different Barnes & Noble, Amazon, all of that.
I had no problem. Barnes & Noble, because I have a strong following in Arizona and Southern California. I'm in Barnes & Noble there through the Lightning Source or Lightning Press, whatever it's called. But Amazon, it did get to Amazon, but Amazon would say not in stock, out of stock, 3 weeks lead time. And we know it doesn't take 3 weeks to print a darn book.
Not true.
I mean, with
Not true.
me, it was
Not true.
automatic.
Hang on, Anne Harrison, what's your experience?
Not true, because I've been with Lightning Source now for 12 years, well, 14 years in total. And yes, Amazon said not in 3 weeks, but the book only takes 3 days, but they're waiting for somebody to place an order, and then it'll be there. This is
So
a ploy that they have, because they have so many books coming through. But with Lightning Source, because with Ingram make it available to them and to all the other major wholesalers. So it's taken up, but they will say to start with, out of stock, we will let you know when available. But if you want to place an order, then they will get it within the week.
Anne, that's a very good observation, Anne. However, I placed my own order for one book, and it took 17 days. So there was a time of I'm going to say probably the first 3 or 4 months that I republished the book that people were like, it's going to take forever to get, and it took me 17 days. So I guess it's just a hurdle limit.
I'm just wondering if it's a good strategy to have a launch and get people to pre-order the book, whether that would help.
Yeah, I would love to know about book launches, since I have 2 more in the works. How do you guys? Somebody told me don't do a pre-sale.
Well, the thing is that until it's published, Amazon don't pick mine up.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Okay. Anybody got some insights onto that?
So
Barbara
unless
Reed.
it's up on Amazon, you can't pre-order.
Barbara Reed. Barbara.
They're all print on demand when you're publishing through those sources, Suzanne. And so that even when I wanted to add it to the local author bookshelf at Barnes & Noble, at various Barnes & Noble stores, they would tell me it's print on demand, so it's going to take this long to order it. And as long as you have an account with Ingram Sparks, then it should happen fairly quickly. But I had made an error in my initial application, and Ingram Spark only allows you to update once a month. So it was at least 3 months before I could get it properly listed on Ingram Spark, which then opened the possibility to have these print-on-demand books come immediately, both to Barnes & Noble and to others, including Amazon. I wanted to also put in a word for an accidental agent. I was doing as much publicity as I could on my own for my books, and I was getting nowhere. But of course, we never can say we're getting nowhere, because we don't really know the extent of what we're putting out there and manifesting. So suddenly, a friend who is a professor at ASU, with whom I've been doing some work on a grant, that involves, in fact, our work, because it's about borders between various things. And so she read my book, loved it, and became my accidental agent, because she wrote a review of it for a scholarly review that she was involved with. She scheduled a time when she could talk about my book when I wasn't even available, although I'd been invited. And so all of a sudden, instead of getting $1.70 in royalties, I got a check last month for $160, which I think is a tremendous coup, and I'm so grateful to her. So you never know where your outreach will land.
Okay. Anybody else got something specifically in relation to Suzanne's question? Sheila Lowe, sorry.
I have a feeling that, and I could be completely wrong, but I think Amazon gives preference to its own, because the KDP books that I have, I can get them almost instantly. And in fact, I'll order some books to take to an event, and they'll tell me, they're going to be here in 2 weeks, and they get here in just a few days. So that's through, Amazon owns them, so they probably are giving preference to their own.
Yeah, I think, and another person advised me, well, with your next book, Suzanne, use Ingram and then tell them don't submit to Amazon, but also publish through Amazon's KDP. So I'm thinking, God, that just sounds like a recipe for disaster. How do you tell Ingram, be able to distribute everywhere but Amazon, because I'm going to go direct with Amazon, so I get the preferential treatment of being in stock right away. So it's like it gets very confusing.
Well, you can't.
Okay.
When you do KDP, that you have to agree not to go anywhere else. If you have KDP, you can't be on Barnes and Noble or any
Well,
of the.
that answers that question. That takes care of that piece of advice now, doesn't it?
I'm happy to help if you need any help with KDP.
I think this is, we do have the expertise here. It's just bringing people together. Scott, a quick one, and then back to Maxine to close.
I was going to say, thank you. If Amazon is making it difficult, why use Amazon? You can, if you get your book and have a good platform on social media like Facebook, you can also use companies called Fiverr, who will then distribute your link to over 1 million followers. And remember, what we are doing, we are a very specialist subject. So you've got to market in a specialist subject area. So you can actually focus on Fiverr and say it's solely for spiritual people. And then you'll find someone who has got X amount of followers, and you pay $5, and they'll tweet about it, they'll blog about it. When we're selling the trance CDs, you just basically, you go to those companies, or if you've got a big following, you just do a shout out on Facebook and then share it across all the social media sites. If you look on online, you've got sites with over 10 to 15,000 followers, and then you just keep flooding that as much as possible, and you'll naturally pick up the traffic. If Amazon's making it difficult, why go to a difficult company? Well, clearly says they don't need your business. Go somewhere else. That's how I would do it. But obviously I understand that the prestige of the name Amazon, but there's other fish out there who are slowly rising. It's a monopoly effect.
That's great. That's brilliant.
That's brilliant information. Brilliant information. Thank you. Maxine, can I call on you, please, just to sum up and
Sure.
any responses you have to some of that information?
A few quick notes. In choosing CreateSpace, or now KDP, I considered Ingram Sparks, and I thought, Amazon has the distribution. They give preference to their own, and so I went with CreateSpace, and it's now called KDB. So when you have a book and you self-publish, you're gonna spend days deciding what platform. Suzanne made a very good point, at least with working mediums or researchers, authors, that there's never only one book. There's always another book to keep yourself out there. This is why James Van Praagh is on his 12th book, or whatever. So you might start with a memoir or a how-to, but then this is why James Van Praagh wrote one about angels, and then he wrote one about reincarnation. To keep himself in the public eye, if that's your livelihood. When you're marketing on the radio, they will, radio hosts that have live audiences, it will be better if you are a mental medium and can do a promotion talk about your book and also give readings. If you can't give readings, then they will be less apt to have your book talk. And a last thing about book signing. Susan Barnes said something about Lilydale, and I'm trying to get up there this summer as well for some book signing. When you schedule a place for book signing, guess what? It's not free. Or for many places, it's not free. For every book you sell, they'll want 50 cents, they'll want $1. So they'll want a kickback based on your sales at a book signing. So to sum it up, don't go in thinking that you know it all. And always seek out people's advice, and guess what? It's going to take longer than you thought. It's going to take more money than you thought. And there's a lot of humility in getting a book out and dealing with unexpected things. So it's a great journey. You feel good about it, but it is a journey.
Wow, I think that's a beautiful summary, Maxine. And where would we be without these authors who have put the books out? I don't know about you, but books have changed my life. And certainly when you first discover the afterlife, you go through a period of buying every book and reading every book and stocking up your shelves. Scott, were you going to say something? Hang on, unmute you. There you go.
Sorry, I was scratching my face.
Are you just scratching your face?
Sorry.
That's all right. So that's anybody else would like. No, wait a minute. I'm just going to ask Craig to close this section of the meeting, and then we can chat. Anybody who'd like to chat. Craig, would you like to add anything from your experience? Now, I know that AREI has got a page. Suzanne has done a wonderful video. We had a section on publishing your own book and on the AREI page. Is that still there, Craig? Is that still
yeah,
we're
it's still
involved?
available, and right, with the advice about publishing. This has been fascinating, Maxine. It's been a wonderful experience to have you talk, and for everyone else to be able to join in. There's so much you have to consider when you're publishing a book, and this is going to give people a lot of good, useful information. So I'm anxious for this to get out, for other people to be able to see it. Maxine, thank you very much. Thank you for everybody else who contributed to the conversation, and look forward to seeing you on next week.
Thank you very much. Now, Karen has got somebody organized for next week. Can you quickly give us a preview, Karen, of what's happening next week? I think we're talking about bereaved parents. We have a new organization who's contacted us looking at, and we've got a speaker coming on from them next week. And
trying to find her name. You always catch me out.
Sorry, Karen.
That's all right.
We'll come back in a second then. I'll give you a chance to find it. Okay. So I'm just going to stop the video at that point, and we can have that up.